Most people can handle one hard thing. Lose a job, they figure it out. A marriage gets rocky, they work through it. Health scare, they push forward. But what happens when all three arrive at the same time? What do you hold on to when everything you were holding on to lets go at once? This is Michael, 39 years old, Detroit, Michigan. 18 months ago, Michael had what most people would call a decent life. A job at an auto parts factory he had held for 9 years, a marriage of 11 years to a woman named Diane, a small house on Berkeley Street with a yard he mowed himself every summer. Not a perfect life, but a real one, built piece by piece over almost 2 decades. Then, in the space of 4 months, 3 things happened. The factory announced layoffs, Michael's name was on the list. 2 weeks later, Diane told him she had not been happy for a long time. She was leaving. And somewhere in the middle of all that, during a routine checkup, a doctor found something in his blood work that needed more tests. The tests took 3 weeks, 3 weeks of not knowing. Michael sat in that small house on Berkeley Street in a city that already knew something about things falling apart and tried to understand how a life he had spent 20 years building could come apart so fast. The hardest part, Michael would later say, was not the job, not even the marriage, it was the mornings. Every morning he woke up, and for exactly 3 seconds, everything was normal. And then it wasn't. He stopped calling people back, not because he didn't want help, but because he did not know how to explain everything at once, and explaining only part of it felt dishonest. So he went quiet. He applied for jobs he did not hear back from. He signed papers he did not want to sign. He sat in waiting rooms with old fluorescent lights and old magazines and waited for news about his own body from someone who had never met him before. One February morning, he drove to the factory out of habit, sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, then drove home. He told no one. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from being surrounded by a life that no longer fits. Michael knew that loneliness well by then. He had been living inside it for months. It was his neighbor Frank who got him there. Not a therapist's office, not a hotline, just a Tuesday evening group at a church 2 blocks away. Men from the neighborhood, mostly working class, mostly going through something. Michael almost did not go. He sat in his car outside for 10 minutes before walking in. The man running the group was a former auto worker named Ray. 60s, quiet voice, steady eyes. Someone who looked like he had been through fire and come out the other side, not unburned, but still standing. Ray did not open with advice. He opened with a question. He said, "What is the one thing you are still doing right, even on the hardest days?" The room was quiet for a moment. Then one man said, "I still make my bed." Another said, "I still call my mother on Sundays." A third said, "I still show up here." Michael thought about it, and then, quietly, he said, "I still make coffee in the morning." Ray nodded. "Good," he said. "Start there." Ray told a story that first night that Michael never forgot. He said, when a sailor is caught in a storm, there is a moment of decision, not whether to fight the storm, you cannot fight a storm, not whether to outrun it, you cannot outrun the sea. The decision is simpler than that. Do you let go of the wheel or do you hold on? Because the storm will do what storms do. The waves will come regardless. The wind will not ask your permission. But the sailor who keeps both hands on the wheel, who makes one small correction at a time, who does not try to sail perfectly, but only to stay pointed in a survivable direction, that sailor comes through, not undamaged, not unchanged, but through. Ray looked around the room and said, "None of you are here to be saved. You are here to remember that you already know how to sail. You just forgot for a while." Over the following weeks, Ray shared 5 principles he called the sailor's rules, not for calm water, for the storm you are already in. The first rule: stop trying to solve everything at once. When multiple things collapse at the same time, the mind tries to fix them all simultaneously, and the effort of that is what breaks people. Not the problems themselves, the attempt to carry them all at once. Michael had 3 crises. He could not solve 3 things at once, but he could choose one, the one with the most immediate consequence, the job, and he could give that one his full attention before the others demanded theirs, one hand on the wheel at a time. The second rule: protect one routine like your life depends on it. When everything is uncertain, the mind needs at least one thing it can count on. Not a grand plan, just one small, repeatable action that says to your nervous system, this is still happening, you are still here. For Michael, it was the coffee. Every morning, without negotiation, not because coffee mattered, but because doing it meant he had gotten out of bed, and getting out of bed meant the day had started, and a day that starts can also end with something better than where it began. The third rule: let people carry part of it. Michael had gone quiet. He understood why, but Ray said something that changed how he thought about it. He said, when you refuse to let anyone help, you are not protecting them from your burden, you are protecting your pride from the vulnerability of being seen. There is a difference. Michael called his brother that week, told him everything, not a summary, everything. His brother drove 4 hours from Toledo the following Saturday, did not bring advice, brought groceries, stayed the weekend. It didn't fix anything, but it meant Michael was no longer the only person who knew the full weight of it. The fourth rule: separate what you can control from what you cannot, and stop spending energy on the second list. Michael made 2 columns on a piece of paper. On the left, things he could control: the jobs he applied for, how he showed up to interviews, whether he ate, whether he slept, whether he went to the Tuesday group. On the right, things he could not control: whether companies called back, what Diane decided, what the test results said. He folded the right column over and focused only on the left. It sounds simple. It was not simple, but it gave him somewhere to put his energy instead of letting it bleed out into everything he could not change. The fifth rule: measure yourself in days, not outcomes. Michael had been measuring himself against the life he used to have, against the man he thought he would be by 40, against outcomes still months away. Ray told him to stop. He said, right now, the only question worth asking yourself at the end of each day is this: did I do what I could with what I had today? Not did I fix it, not did I get the job, not is everything okay, just did I do what I could? On the days the answer was yes, Michael let himself rest, not because the problems were gone, but because he had earned the right to put them down for the night. 14 months after the layoff, Michael is working again, a different factory, slightly better pay, a commute that adds 20 minutes to his day but takes him past a lake he has started to notice. The divorce was finalized in October. It was painful in the way that honest endings always are. No villains, just 2 people who had grown in different directions for longer than either of them admitted. The blood work turned out to be nothing serious, but those 3 weeks of not knowing taught him something he could not have learned any other way. He still goes to the Tuesday group, not because he's in crisis anymore, but because Ray is there and Frank is there. And every few weeks, a new man walks in and sits in his car outside for 10 minutes before coming through the door. Michael always makes sure to be the first one to say hello. He still makes his coffee every morning. That has not changed, but now, while it brews, he stands at the kitchen window and watches the yard. The same yard, different season, still his. When everything falls apart at once, the world will tell you to be strong. But strength in a storm doesn't look like standing unaffected. It looks like keeping your hands on the wheel, making the coffee, calling your brother, walking through the door even after sitting in the car for 10 minutes. You don't have to fix everything today.
You just have to do what you can with what you have, and then do it again tomorrow. If Michael's story felt like something you have been carrying quietly, drop the word anchor in the comments. And if someone in your life is in the middle of their storm right now, send them this, because sometimes all a person needs to know is that someone else held on and made it through. Mindshift Tales. Shift your mind, change your life.